On today's episode of Locked On Canucks, which former Norris Trophy winner could potentially land himself in Vancouver on a professional trial? If JT Miller does stay in Vancouver, what will constitute as a successful season for the Canucks leading scorer from last year? And the Canucks made some changes on their personnel on the health side of the team. It is Locked On Canucks on a Tuesday, August the 2nd, and it starts now.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. You can find me at Twitter at _process sports. You can find our show's Twitter, at Locked On Canucks. Please also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. We are free and, most importantly, also available wherever you get your podcast services. Well, I also have some special news not some special news, but some exciting news, personal news of myself. I'm actually back home in British Columbia. I left Toronto for a couple of weeks to come back home, recharge the batteries, rest, relax, really submerge myself back into Canuck land. And quite frankly, I've loved it. I came here on Friday of last week. The long weekend was beautiful. The weather was very, very hot. Kind of reminded me of Toronto, so I didn't get a chance to get the full, kind of remind me of back east, but it's been wonderful to see family, friends, the beautiful scenery, of course. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. And of course, I've enjoyed keeping up with the news in Canuckland, which there hasn't really been much going forward. So, as I mentioned off the cold open, who are some particular players that the Canucks could go after at this late stage or kind of slow period of free agency right before training camp? We will look at JT Miller because he still is a member of the Vancouver Canucks, and we will continue on with our player projections. And what constitutes as a good season for JT Miller if he does stay in the fold with the Vancouver Canucks, whether that's with a contract extension or the Canucks roll the dice, and decide to keep him. And then also, the Canucks did make some changes on the health side of the team, and why I think that's very important because they use a lot of experience elsewhere. But first, I want to dive into a player that I've been a big fan of. Since he came into the league, I've always been a big fan of. Won the Norris Trophy, was integral part of a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals, who has not been signed yet. And he gets a bad rap across the league, and that, of course, is PK Subban. Of course, he plays for the New Jersey Devils, a team that's been linked to the Canucks all offseason because of the JT Miller trade saga. But I've heard a lot of fans talk, well, why don't we give PK a try, I'm all for it. He's 33 years old. He is an unrestricted free agent, and he just came off a contract that paid him $9 million. Of course, that's when he signed that big 8-year deal back in 2014. And then he was traded 2 years later to Nashville for Shea Weber in that massive deal. And then, of course, traded to New Jersey a couple of years after that. So I'm a big PK Subban guy, but it seems that in New Jersey, they're going for a youth movement and a guy who's 33, whose production has dipped a lot in New Jersey. This guy was a very prominent defenseman in the NHL, and he's not the same guy he was when he was in Montreal when he was winning the Norris Trophy. Even the guy in the first couple of years in Nashville, where he was one of the most point productive defenseman in the league, had a booming shot, can skate, and he kind of fell off in New Jersey. Well, I think PK Subban might be a good PTO candidate or a cheap 1-year deal for the Canucks because although he's 33, he still fills a void. He's a right shot defenseman, which we all know the Canucks are very, very thin on. And he's got that kind of style, swagger that will invigorate a marketplace, I think. I think PK Subban, he always used to get, ridiculed for showing too much personality, having too much, being over flamboyant with the big celebrations and, of course, his eccentric off-season workouts. I think PK Subban, you bring him in on a PTO, he's going to be motivated to want to prove people that he can still play in the league. His agent just came out and said he still wants to play and he thinks that he deserves an opportunity to play. I am in agreement. I think PK Subban, anybody that's won a Norris trophy and has that pedigree that PK Subban has, deserves to be in the league until they deserve every opportunity until they can prove they can no longer play anymore. And I think PK Subban can still play. Where does he slot in on this Canucks roster? You're not asking him to be, PK Subban back in Montreal where he was getting 50, 60 points a year. The second last season in Nashville, back in 2017, 2018, he had, 59 points. He had 16 goals, 43 assists. In Jersey, he's only top 20 points once. That was this past year in 77 games. So, he's fallen a lot. But I still think the skill is there, the tenacity is there. And I think, having him you see this with players kind of falling, that, they have a certain motivation to want better. Yes, he is of older. He is of a, but I think if he can come in and play like a bottom six role and, play on the second power play unit with OEL or something like that, I don't think that's a bad option at all. He's been around the block. He's probably going to be a good leader in the locker room. So why not take the jump and sign PK Subban? I think that would be a great thing for the Canucks to do, if they ever if they ever want to do so. Of course, Jim Benning was interested in PK Subban before he got traded to New Jersey. That was got caught tampering with that. So that could potentially be an option for the Canucks to rectify their defense. A couple other players still out there. There's Zach Aston Reese, who of course was a part of the Pittsburgh organization with Rutherford and now Veen. A bottom line center / winger who can play that bit of a grit type game and kind of chip in on that type of stuff. He can play a shutdown role. There's Alex Chiasson, he's still out there. The Canucks know what Chiasson's all about. He was a successful PTO last year that made the team, played 67 games at 13 goals. He was not a bad option for the Canucks at all. He's out there. Calvin DeHaan, a left shot defenseman, but he's played the right side before. So that could be something that the Canucks want to still address, the right side of the defense. He has been, hit with the injury bug of late, but last year with Chicago, he put up some respectable results, played 69 games last year, which was, very important. Then after that, you have Ryan Murray, who, has been, a former, high first round pick. He didn't, he played 37 games, no goals, 4 assists. He was a part of the Stanley Cup winner, but he was hampered with injuries. He's always been hampered with injuries. He's never really gotten a chance to really submit himself. Then if you want to go back to the bottom lines, there's still, the spot for grit. You can look at a guy like Brett Ritchie, who was out there. He played 41 games last year with the Flames in their bottom six. So there's, Dominic Simone. So there are options out there. But when I'm looking at the landscape right now, and you look at the Canucks roster as currently constituted, without a JT Miller trade, there's still a hole on defense. And I think PK Subban would be the best fit for the Canucks on their back end because he has pedigree, he has skill, he has a reason to be motivated to play better. He's playing in a horrible situation in New Jersey. And I think playing in a market like Vancouver and playing with a team that has a chance to make the playoffs could reinvigorate PK Subban and make him, want to play better. It's not like he's a not in shape or anything like that. The guy puts the work in on the offseason. You follow him on social media. So why not take a plunge at PK Subban and see what happens? So that's my thoughts on what the Canucks could do next and who the biggest move they could, other than the JT Miller trade, could be. And I think it's PK Subban. And I would love to see PK Subban play in Vancouver. I think it would be a great fit, not only for the locker room, but also for the fans. He's an exciting player, and I think that would be awesome for to build a suspense for the upcoming season. So that's that. Coming up after this break, I want to talk to you guys about JT Miller, as I just mentioned. If he does stay, what will constitute as a good season? Is it, again, 99 points is the bar, or is there tempered expectations for JT Miller? So stick around for that. But first, I want to talk to you guys about the fine folks at betonline.net, which is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be your top online resource for all your sporting wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, podcasts that they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we are back. Locked On Canucks, show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. Over the last few episodes, spanning from last week and then forth, I've been going through the Canucks roster and giving prominent players in the roster who I put project on what constitutes will be a good season. So we've gone through, of course, Pettersson and Hughes, the ability to step up and become those elite players in their position groups and becoming more of a leadership role. Bo Horvat, what does he continue? Not only is it on the ice, but off the ice. Brock Besser, Vasily Podkolzin, Andrei Kuzmenko, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So today, we're going to go, and I've been putting this one off for a bit because I was hoping a trade would happen or something would come to a resolution. But I'm going to assume that JT Miller is going to be on the Vancouver Canucks come September for training camp. So what will constitute as a good season for JT Miller, who was coming off a career best 99 points this past year? So for those of you that did forget, JT Miller played 80 games last year, scored 32 goals, 67 assists for 99 points. Ever since he's joined the Vancouver Canucks, he's been, around a point. He's been over a point per game, 2 of the 3 seasons. And then last one, the lockout shortened season, he played 53 games and 46 points. So he's been the Canucks' best player, I would think is very safe to say, over the last 3 seasons. When I'm looking at this next year for JT Miller, there's so many things he does well. And Jim Rutherford has said, Patrick Levine has said that he is our best player. And there is no doubt about that, in my opinion, that JT Miller right now is the Canucks' best player. He's not their most talented or their most important, but he's their best player. The way he impacts the game on the offensive side, the defensive side, and the locker room, he is their most complete player. JT Miller, of course, can put up points. He can play center. He can play wing. He can kill penalties. He's on the penalty power play, He can do it all. He's a 5-tool Swiss Army knife for the Vancouver Canucks. And also, he has that raw emotion, that raw sandpaper and energy that the Canucks need, just that bite that the Canucks, any team will need. Any team that's aspiring to be a playoff team or whatnot needs to have a guy like JT Miller who can chew into somebody when they need to be chewed into. And I think that's what makes JT Miller so important is he can do so many different things, impact the game in so many different ways, and take pressure off guys like Elias Pettersson, who, as a young player, I'd love to see him, take all the important draws, but JT Miller can step in and do that. It makes the Canucks more versatile. It makes teams game plan more. It makes the Canucks, it adds another dimension to the Vancouver Canucks. And that's why I was always so kind of hesitant for the Canucks to trade him, because he's been so important. But when I look at next season, let's just throw a hypothetical out there that he is on a 1-year deal still. He has not signed a new contract extension. Well, you're going to get an extremely motivated player who wants to prove to not only the Vancouver front office, but the rest of the NHL that, hey, that 99-point season was not a fluke. I am a top echelon player in this game, and I'm about to cash in this next offseason for a lot of money, whether it's with you, Vancouver, or another team that's going to offer me that money that I want. So if that happens, I think JT Miller is the type of guy that will internalize that, and he will absolutely play unreal, which will be good for the Vancouver Canucks, who, of course, need a guy like JT Miller to help them make a playoff push. Even if JT Miller signs a big extension with the Canucks, right, I still think you're going to get a highly motivated player that wants to prove that he's worth the money, that he's the right guy the Canucks invested in, and he's stepped to become a leader of this team and be a part of the solution. I suspect, because he's going to have every opportunity with this roster under Bruce Boudreau to be in every situation. He's going to be on the top line with Brock Besser and Elias Pettersson, whether he's playing center or the wing. He's going to be on that top line. He's going to be on the #1 power play unit. So he will have ample opportunity to collect points, which will help him, get a new contract. But it's also just going to help make that top 6 of the Canucks even more dangerous. If you take JT Miller out of the top 6 for the Vancouver Canucks. It's still a very good top 6, but it's just so much better with a guy like JT Miller on there that makes it so much more versatile. Um, so point projection wise, when I look at JT Miller and I think about this upcoming season, I predict, another season where he will be, barring any injuries or anything like that, if he's healthy, he will be another point per game player, probably around another 30 to 35 goals. And I'd say from 50 to 60 something assists for his, 80 to 90 points again. I could be well off. He could have a tail, drop off a bit, but the way he's positioned on this roster, the way he gets ample opportunity to, be on the first unit power play, the top line, play with uber skilled guys like Elias Pettersson, a guy that can shoot like Brock Besser, who I think is going to have a much better year, and that will help JT Miller collecting points, because I think once Brock Besser's shot starts going in again and teams are going to start to focus on him, that's going to open up more lanes for JT Miller to score, and we know he can score. So I think if JT Miller is on the Vancouver Canucks, whether it's with a contract or without a contract, you're going to get an extremely motivated player, which we know he is. And we will see a player who is wanting to A, prove that he's worth the money, or B, a guy that's going to be, hey, you don't want to pay me? Well, if you don't want to pay me, I'm going to prove to the rest of the NHL that I deserve to get paid. So when I look at JT Miller, not only is it just his stats, not only is it going to be the face-offs, not only is it going to be his locker room presence, it's going to be just the mood he gives you, the confidence, that the swagger that I was talking about PK Subban. He has a certain confidence and a swagger that he carries himself with that's it's infectious. And I think when you see a guy like that and you know that you have a guy like that in your foxhole, it's going to help this team that's got some young pieces that will feel more comfortable. And from all accounts, he has been a great teammate in the locker room. I know there's been a whole thing with him and Bo Horvat, but those two as the end. Bo Horvat's the heart and soul, but JT Miller is the engine of the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks go as he goes, if you know what I mean. Like, he's the guy that will chew into people, will throw a big hit, will get the team going. So I think that when I look at this season, if JT Miller is around, I expect another point per game season from him, and I expect a guy who's going to go, for lack of better words, balls to the wall every time he's out there on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks. So that's my thoughts on the JT Miller situation if he is in Vancouver. Coming up after this last break, I want to go over some news that came out today in Canucks line, where the Canucks announced they were adding new medical strength and conditioning staff. So stick around for that. Welcome back to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. Last segment of the show. So news today out of Canuck land was the Canucks added some new pieces and new people to their new medical and strength and conditioning staff to help fill out their new human performance development department. So, their human performance department. It's a new term. So the Canucks hired the golfing doc, the former head athletic therapist of the Calgary Stampeders, the team chiropractor of the Whitecaps and the Warriors, and Toronto Maple Leaf strength and conditioning coach have all been hired as a part of this new human performance development program. So they hired a bunch of these people from all these different avenues of sport. And you might be thinking, well, why are you talking about this? It's not that important. Well, I'm a firm believer that all sports are intertwined and the movements are very similar, and it can be cross-platform. If you play hockey, there's certain movements in hockey that could translate to football or soccer, or vice versa. Baseball can transfer over, skiing, golf, whatever. I believe all sports, certain movements are cross-platform and that you can transfer them over different sports. So why are the Canucks bringing people from all different walks of sport into their franchise? Well, it's bringing, as I said before, bringing more smart people into the organization. And when you have smart people in the organization and people that have a great mind and different ideas, that's just going to make your organization better. I hark back to the Mike Gillis era, where they hired people like sleep doctors and stuff like that to help the players gain peak performance. Now, it might not work out, and people might not think, well, why don't they just go a traditional route? Well, the traditional route hasn't been working. The Canucks also have the most difficult travel schedule in all the NHL. Canucks have always been one of the teams that's always been hit with the injury bug harder than others because of that travel. So I think having people from different walks of sport and different walks of life in the building provides a fresh new input, provides a fresh new dynamic. And I think it's something smart and progressive to do. You look at the teams that are successful across North American sports, they're teams that are progressive, teams like the LA Rams, teams like, the Golden State Warriors, progressive teams that aren't afraid to try different things and push the envelope. That's how you become successful. You don't become successful by just kind of following the pack. You have to step out from the pack and try things that nobody's ever tried before. That's why when Mike Gillis hired a sleep doctor, no other NHL team had that at that particular moment. And that gave the Canucks competitive advantage over other teams. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for this, but I'm saying it's a right move going forward, and it gives the Canucks another dynamic for a health-wise for their players, but it's also another recruiting factor. When you have a good medical staff, these players will appreciate that because you're looking out for their best interest, and it just makes the whole organization more appealing for other people. So quick thoughts about that. I kind of like the move. I thought it was kind of interesting. So that's that. All today for Locked On Canucks. It is August, so I just wanted to let out a quick PSA that we will be dropping down episodes to 3 days a week. Of course, not much talk, but also we all want to, enjoy our summer a little bit. So, but don't worry, 3 days a week, there will still be Locked On Canucks to keep you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. Tomorrow, we will dive back into more player projections for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I want you to make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Take care, guys. Stay safe, and I will talk to you tomorrow.